So in conclusion, what we really want to look at is the ethics behind each of these 7 scenarios. So how do these scenarios show that taxation is ethical or unethical? The morality of taxation via the cost-benefit ratio. Consider the cost-benefit ratio versus the do no harm. Both of them are very different tax systems. You can see the ethical reasoning behind each of those. And then you have the argument for which brings the arguments for taxation. So why taxes are good? They redistribute wealth. Is the redistribution of wealth ethical or not? If it helps people, then, and according to the cost-benefit ratio, if it helps people more than it harms them, then that's good. According to do no harm, it could be considered otherwise. Argument against taxation. Are taxes a form of control? If the taxes are a form of control, then are they truly ethical? Are taxes ethical if they harm people? That goes back to your whether you do cost system ratio or whether you do no harm. Are taxes ethical if they harm someone? Are they ethical if they are a form of control? Are they ethical if they help people by through the redistribution of wealth? If taxes are ethical, then you have the moral obligation to pay. If they are not ethical, then you have the moral obligation to not pay and to help other people not pay, which is the tax gap, the legal tax avoidance or the legal loopholes, the legal obligation to help people pay would be to close the loopholes, legally close the loopholes, and also to not advise clients about the loopholes if taxes are good. Why do people evade taxes? Well, it's typically a negative perception of the government, which is dealt with in the 7th finding, as well as the fact that people do not feel that the taxes help them. It goes back to the cost-benefit ratio. People feel they're more harmed than good, than they have their community around them. So the morality behind ethics is very complex, and really it comes down to we have to ask ourselves, are taxes ethical? I do not believe that this study gives a concrete conclusion on the ethical nature of taxes. I think it raises a lot of questions. So the implications of this research, there are several gaps of the research that should be followed up on. There are a plethora of theories that are for taxation. However, there are a distinct lack of theories that are put forth against taxation. Some theories that the current research recommends and that have not been dived into are John Locke and Ronald M. Green. Ronald M. Green has a work of ethics and taxation, a theoretical framework. Unfortunately, his work fell outside of the parameters of our scope of research, so we were not able to dive into it and include it. More precise research dealing strictly with the arguments for and against taxation should be conducted, but the research that is conducted in that manner should not be limited to staying within 10 years of the date, and it should not be limited strictly to scholarly sources that are peer-reviewed. The research of the ethics behind taxation is important for the practice of accounting as a whole because it shapes how moral accounts are handled in the area of taxation. As mentioned previously, a pro-tax accountant will not show his clients tax breaks to aid them in limiting their taxation. However, if he is against taxes, then he is going to help them through every legal means at his disposal, including tax loopholes and the like. A more definitive answer on taxes being ethical or not would help shape the fundamentals of the tax community. It would help define best practice. So, yes, theoretically, most people believe that best practice is saving money. However, a more definitive answer of yes, best practice is paying the lowest amount possible versus, well, it might be, it might not be, and it's depending on who you ask. So a more definitive answer, more definitive set-in-stone ethics can be made based on whether or not the taxes are ethical. So the overall conclusion is that the study has shown that ethics and taxation are linked to the perception of the morality of the government, and further research should be conducted into the view of people on morality of the government, not their approval of it. If people view the government as moral, then taxes will increase. If they view it as immoral, then their reasoning behind that would show a way that the government could fix that perception, and thereby passively increase their tax revenue, because people will be more willing to pay. Do most people feel that the government is corrupt? Do they feel that the government spends its money wisely, or do they view the government as spending as wasteful? If the answer to these questions is yes, then tax evasion will rise with non-compliance. Also, if these answers are yes, then are taxes to such a immoral government moral? Is it moral? Is it a moral obligation to pay? It's a legal obligation. Is it a moral obligation? Is the question. If the government is good, if it is not corrupt, if their spending of tax dollars is wise, then it would be a moral obligation to pay that government. If the government would fix the perception, then I think the conclusion really is that the government would fix even just the perception of people of it, and tax compliance will rise. If it does not, then the tax evasion will become more rampant, especially as times get harder. Now, as promised, we are going to dive into references.